So there's a big gaping hole in the superhero genre, in my opinion, because one particular superhero is missing right now, and he doesn't have his own video game. Now, there's been a lot of discussion around this, and I've noticed that there are multiple sides of the conversation where some think that this superhero may not be viable to make a game about, while others think that it's absolutely possible. Before I jump into the video, welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today, I'm going to be talking about why I think the Gotham Knights game needs to be some sort of a precursor game or story that will lead into a Superman title down the road. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because, Superman right now is basically one of those characters that has shied away from the video game scene, or in the case of Warner Brothers games themselves, they don't seem to have had any confidence that anyone will be able to do a Warner Brothers game based on some of the rumors that we heard and even pictures that emanated from the concept art to back up some of these rumors or at least highlight them in a different light. And so when the developers at Warner Brothers Games Montreal opened up the Gotham Knights reveal gameplay by saying that Robin had somehow gained access into the Justice League short-range teleport system, it started to ring all kinds of bells in my mind. What if that, somebody was working on a Superman game to follow? What would they do? How would they deliver the game to the community, to an audience, to make the character believable? And I think there are ways that that can be done. And if you think about it, it's, in my opinion, quite simple. So let's first look at the way some of these other characters have been established before we then look at how Superman can actually be written in that particular paradigm or using that same standard. If you look at Spider-Man, or let's just say Spider-Man Miles Morales, you are going to see something where this particular character goes from a zero to hero, transition all through the story of the game. If you notice, they had introduced him very newly. I mean, Miles Morales, I think, is a 2014 or so character. It's very new, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight him. He's basically no one. He's growing up basically as every other child that is, of some level of intellect like him. He's very smart nonetheless. Yes, a very, very apt scientific, kid. And that's basically, what Miles has got going for him. So he's really pursuing that very hard. But there are also a lot of different issues that actually come with it. And for those of you who don't know, I'm talking about the Miles Morales in the Marvel Spider-Man video game universe. I'm not speaking about the Marvel Spider-Man, universe where you're talking about Miles Morales in the movies or in the comics. I'm talking about how he's been adapted to the video games. And then over the course of time, there's a huge shift in everything that happens. Basically something happens and his dad, a police officer, is in the line of duty and he passes away. And, Miles starts to basically start getting bold and, pushing the boundaries in order for him to, in a sense, replicate his dad's legacy, and then somehow ends up being Spider-Man, links up with Peter Parker, and then in his own game, Peter Parker basically leaves the scene, and then he is allowed to kind of launch, fly, and shine. So there is a zero to hero transition with this particular character. And I think every character is written like this in many cases, and they don't have to be superheroes. Let's look at the case of Bruce Wayne. Let's look at the case of Batman himself. Batman has his own zero to hero story. And the way it's done is from his childhood. And his childhood has shown that, basically it is a very rash world out there where he becomes an orphan at such a very early age. And using all of the resources and capturing basically the source of his biggest fear, he grows to become someone who is basically the depiction of fear itself and is now this very strong, formidable character. So there always has to be something that goes with a character, and that is their vulnerabilities. If you think about Miles Morales, there is the vulnerability of him basically actually succumbing to fear, but because of the way he's written, his fear basically allows for him to basically activate some of his really cool superpowers. Or in the sense, if you look at it from the Marvel Spider-Man animated universe, that's what kind of gives off the fact that he's got that ability where he can basically blend into the environment. And so that was actually really cool that his biggest vulnerability has been turned into his biggest strength. In the sense of Batman, He understands that he basically loves to be alone and has all these other vulnerabilities, but he understands that he can't do his work alone. So in some way, in some manner, he's been able to train up a whole family around him, taking on, people who have a lot of potential and basically bringing them into his inner circle, and also expanding that circle, by the way, in order for him to find the greater good for humanity. So if you think about all of this, how does Superman get to be adapted in this way? How do you take Superman, who already is established, to go from a zero to hero story without having to write the, good old, Krypton to Earth type story, and, basically baby Kal-El to, Clark Kent in Smallville, all the way to Clark Kent in Metropolis, and then to Superman? How do you actually get past that to write an interesting and fresh take on the character in a video game? And I think the answer is very simple. One thing that many people don't understand is this particular zero to hero transition usually loops itself every time the character is depicted or rewritten. You have to have it in there, even when the character is already established as, this amazing, character or somebody who cannot be defeated. When you're going to further, depict the character to your audience, you have to go back to the zero and bring them back to the hero. I'll give you another example. Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, the movie done by Christopher Nolan. Batman's already been established by this time. If you guys already know that, and he's already basically a formidable force. But then Christopher Nolan writes a character that basically breaks Batman, throws him in a pit and puts him back down to zero. And then he climbs out of that pit, even overcoming his weaknesses, and then goes back out to fight. So they already took an OP character in the case of Batman and then broke him, threw him down into the deepest bottoms of his, I would say the deepest and darkest place he had ever been in many cases, and then brought him to rise. That is what storytelling is about. You've got to get your hero to a place where they're low and then allow for them to rise. In the case of Superman, you have to do a lot more. Not only are you going to have to do psychological things, with Superman, you have to get to places where the physical can affect him. And this is not just tossing kryptonite at him. You can put kryptonite into the equation, but what if you took him back to where he came from, or you looped his story back outside of Earth? Hence, if you're going to write a Superman game, you have to put him in a place that is outside of his comfort zone. Earth is a very wonderful place for Superman because we have a sun that's very, very important to life forms here and is also important for him. And so when you think about all of that, you basically have to take Superman and put him in those elements that are away from where he can gain an easy source of power. And then you can create a world where the rules are now defined by you, the author, and Superman has to succumb to them. And hence, when you're about to finally go full circle, Superman has to then overcome those issues, and then finally you can get him to rise out of the ashes or out of the handicap that you've basically given him outside of his comfort zone, because he's a superhero that basically lays hold of the physical and can overpower it in many cases. So that is exactly what it is you need to do. And I think this is the aspect that many have forgotten, and because of what we call the rogues gallery, where sometimes you have to go and tap into a lot of these established villains, it's kind of weird for people to kind of think of anything past maybe Doomsday or even Darkseid to, be some of those characters that can handle a character like Superman. If you get what I mean, I think people don't understand that you can actually do stuff like this using elements as well to be able to, deteriorate the character. In fact, you can even go, basically step a little bit out of the bounds of the canon and create some level of a threat that is not necessarily kryptonite, but something that is unknown to Superman himself or something that's unknown to the audience. This also brings a little bit of tension, and this also, in my opinion, brings that unknown and has everybody, in a sense, looking forward to what that is. I mean, if maybe Superman goes to another planet, say on a space expedition, I've mentioned this in a past video before. If Superman starts out and says, okay, Superman, you need to go check this stuff out. We got an interference here. And then he goes into outer space. There's an established, storyline for that, actually, from the old Superman cartoon series, where he used to go to outer space and do some missions and stuff. you send Superman out there, and then after he gets out there, something lays hold of him that he has not experienced before. This is now where Superman is out of his comfort zone. He has, basically a very limited amount of resources. He can't just call home. He just can't, jump into the sun or use some big building to smash this thing. This threat has now, in a sense, gotten hold of Superman, has him entrapped, or in a sense has just maybe even teleported him to a whole different environment where he's now subject to all the rules of that environment, and he then has to fight his way into getting out of that situation. And then when you want to bring him out, to pretty much bring him to out of the ashes, you have to basically make it close to what Superman is very much concerned about. And there are a few things he's very concerned about. I mean, many of you know he's concerned about, basically in his mind, the welfare of humanity and Lois Lane. Simple as that. And so there are so many of these, aspects that you can basically use to get Superman, into a place where you fit him into the character, arches as well. I think many writers in the cinematic and even in the animated series have not shied away from this and have done it unapologetically. I think it's in the video games where, everyone is so concerned that Superman's going to punch a thug and the thug's going to disappear. I don't think that needs to be the approach. I think when you're going to write Superman, you have to basically eliminate Superman fighting crime on, pretty much a global level. Rather, you need him fighting, threats on an intergalactic level, basically fighting bad guys that don't even play. And if they show up on Earth, it's a problem. So don't even let Superman allow them come to Earth. And if you do, then that needs to be the final fight where there is chaos everywhere. Not like, oh, we're going to be fighting all these bad guys, and then by the time we're done, there's nowhere on Earth all through the game. No. You keep that and reserve that to the end. And then when it all is said and done, the culminating, battle will now be in Superman's comfort zone. And then now the enemy has to contend with a very strong Superman. I think this is the way that it will be done if it's ever done. And I think this is the way that it can be done because, there's so many aspects of the character that many people have just, in a sense, known and seen and have dismissed. But I think there's a lot of potential there. So I think Warner Brothers Games Montreal needs to look into the possibility of potentially bringing Superman to light using the story from Gotham Knights as kind of a precursor to doing it. Because, they're working on a second game, and now that they've written Gotham Knights and nobody knows what they've actually done with Batman, we think perhaps that this so-called second game they're working on, which has been confirmed to be a DC hero comic, or DC hero-based game, we hope it's a Superman game. And if it's a Superman game, I think that's definitely kind of the route they're going to go with the character, by developing the character, putting him in a zero state, and then launching him into a hero position over the course of the story. Thank you very much for listening to the video. I appreciate you guys so much. If you enjoyed the content, you can hit the like button, or you can just, comment and let me know. Talk to you all soon. Peace out.